Aniruddhan Vasudevan is a sociocultural anthropologist who writes and translates between Tamil and English. Vasudevan holds a Ph.D. in anthropology from the University of Texas at Austin and now teaches at Princeton University, New Jersey. Some of his translations include One Part Woman, A Lonely Harvest, Pyre by Perumal Murugan, and A Night with a Black Spider, a short story collection written by Ambai. His area of research is how people form structures of care outside of traditional forms of family and community. Apart from his translations, he closely worked with Tirunangai, the transgender community, for his doctoral thesis. In this episode, he spoke about his initiation into translations, the work he has done with Tirunangai community, and the book Pyre he translated from Tamil, which was written by Tamil Novelist Perumal Murugan. Using the Amazon link given in the show notes, you can buy Aniruddhan Vasudevan's books. Welcome to Harshaniyam, Dr. Aniruddhan Vasudevan.
Thank you, Anil. Thank you so much for having me, and thanks to the entire Harshaniyam team as well.
Aniruddhan Vasudevan is a trained Bharatanatyam dancer, social activist, translator, and he has a PhD in anthropology from UT Austin. And now you are teaching at Princeton, New Jersey. Where did it all start? Can you tell us about this journey from the beginning?
First of all, I haven't been a social activist in a while, so I should put it on record, because there are people who are doing the work and I'm not. I haven't done that in a while. But yes, so I grew up in Kumbakonam in central coastal Tamil Nadu in Tanjavur district. I grew up there. I did all my schooling there. I was there till my 12th standard, my higher secondary. Then I moved to Chennai. And dance started there. I think dance is probably the earliest thing I remember. I was 6 years old when I started learning Bharatanatyam from Kuttalam M. Selvam, a wonderful teacher at this institution called Janaranjani in Kumbakonam. My father was a college professor at the Government College for Men in Kumbakonam, which was part of Bharatidasan University. He was a chemistry professor, and that's why we were there. Even though Kumbakonam happens to be an ancestral town for me on my father's side, we hadn't lived there. Couple of generations prior to my father's had not really lived there. But my father went back there for his job, and we were there, and I went to school there. And I think that's how it all started, with dance. And also, because I went to school in Kumbakonam, I went to an English medium school. But, Tamil is, you study Tamil, you learn Tamil, and you don't have, for instance, like in Chennai, you don't have like French, Sanskrit, Hindi options. We didn't have those in the early 80s. I mean, mid to late 80s, I must say. So I think that's the thing, you had wonderful English teachers and wonderful Tamil language teachers, and dance was happening, and that's how it all began. Yeah.
Okay. When did you start reading Tamil fiction or non-fiction? School days itself?
Yes. I mean, I don't exactly remember a particular starting point for that. I think some of the best teachers were the language teachers for us in school. So had great joy in reading even the material in the textbooks. I don't exactly remember what was the moment when I started reading fiction. I had I'm sure it was popular fiction. I had a great grandmother who had when Ponniyin Selvan, Kalki's Ponniyin Selvan had originally been published. I think she had taken the pages from the book and she had bound them herself. We had all these. She had hand bound them, and we had these bound volumes of Ponniyin Selvan, and I think she would talk about them, and so I think popular fiction like that, sort of historical fiction, fantasy fiction, I think that's how it started, and then parallel to that, English reading was happening, Enid Blyton and the famous Five and others. So I don't remember an exact starting point, but there were avid readers at home. My father, my mother, both of them, and my aunt, and everybody was reading. So there was the general sort of culture of sitting with books.
Now, before we move on to your writing and translation, the area of research at Princeton for you is how people who are outside traditional forms of family and community form structures of care. Can you please elaborate?
Yeah, so I'm a gay man, and it I went through uh, the struggles that accompany that that kind of self-realization and knowing, and then struggle to cope with the how the world is around you and all of that, and then the thing that we call coming out, all of that. And I'm sure, and that those struggles are also hugely influenced by your other forms of privileges or the lack thereof, and so so I had to find friends. I had to find community. The thing about being lesbian or gay or bisexual or transgender or whatever is that you're a minority in your own family. You don't share that with many others in the
Right,
family or anybody in the family. So there is a deep sense of loneliness and an alienation that you feel, and you find you yearn for friendships and community. You want to. In fact, it's only when you find others like you that you even feel that, okay, there's nothing wrong with me and I'm fine. And but then what happens? So how do you sustain those friendships, right? So with family and all, there are these, I mean, family, there is just the very logic of family. It keeps you bound to the family, sometimes whether or not you want to be part of it, it keeps you bound to it. Any logic of being part of a collective
mm,
usually has some strong narrative of attachment,
right,
or it has some rituals, through which you kind of reaffirm, okay, I belong to this. Friendships, we do, schools, you go, you're part of a group of people all the time. So, but when people form friendships and communities that don't have that strength of that tradition or rituals or whatever it is, how do we sustain them, right? I mean, how do we keep them going? And I saw some really wonderful ways in which people who are lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender, and our friends and allies, we create these spaces and communities. I see, I work with a group of Tirunangais, wonderful women, trans women, and I see how they create these families and these networks. So I'm largely interested in, how people do that, how people create these relationships going, that do not have the support of, the traditional conventional things.
right, right. Okay. Now, your doctoral thesis is about religious and communal life of Tirunangai transgender women and their spiritual connection to goddess Angalamman. Can you please talk elaborately about this?
Yeah, yeah, it's that dissertation needs to, I mean, I wrote a dissertation for sure. I'm saying I'm just dissatisfied with it. There needs to be a lot more work, which was what I have been doing since I graduated.
Right,
So, Angalaman is uh, is part of uh, the regional devotional landscape, right? I mean, in Andhra too, like you have in Andhra, Telangana, you have Ankamma, Ankalamma, and the stories are sometimes the same, slightly
yeah,
different. Whatever it is, Yellamma you have in Karnataka, and Ellayamman you have in. So these mother goddesses, these ammans, have a way of. They're part of the landscape,
right,
right? And they're part of the local ecologies. Their stories, their narratives are also very much grounded in the local and the regional imaginations and imaginaries, as we call them. And what I found was that for a lot of Tirunangais, there is a special connection to Angalam, and a lot of them are very, very ardent devotees of Angalamma. And this devotion is not just doing prayers and offerings, right? It also means channeling the goddess, embodying her, functioning as ritual specialists. It means, and also Angalamma is not a goddess who's exclusive to the transgender community. So they share her worship with many castes and communities across the region. So it means that you have to Tirunangais do shared worship of her with others. So I was able to, it just sort of happened during my research, and saw that how Tirunangais, for instance, do lot of Tirunangais do Angalaman worship along with their natal or biological family. So it means that they have a very interesting relationship with their parents and their siblings and families. And they do this worship. For instance, if Tirunangais live in various parts of Chennai, and particularly in North Chennai, many of them have their own little shrines for the goddess. And the entire street comes together to do the festivals for the goddess. The one of the festivals happens in February, March. It's called the Mayana Kollai festival. The other is in the month of Adi, and then every month something or the other. So it means that it's a way of doing shared life with others. And for me, the Tirunangai devotion to Angalaman became a lens through which to see how Tirunangais do relationship with others, but also relationship with themselves. Because if I am a devotee of Angalaman, and if I people see me that way, it means that I have a sense of this is how I should live, this is who I am. And all of it became, and I think I wanted to learn, because how do Tirunangais embed themselves in these relationships, right? They don't extract themselves always as separate from the world, separate from the world around them. So that is broadly my work, and I wrote a dissertation. It's okay. I mean, dissertation is something that in which you show some promise, and you graduate. But since then, it's been 3 years since I graduated. I've been working on a book manuscript on the same topic, so I've been doing the work. Yeah.
So you're still working on that, and you're in touch with them still.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very close relationship.
Yeah.
And it's also, I think, for me finding, I must say, it's also about me finding, I didn't plan it that way, but it's also for me finding a home, a community, right? Because this is a way for me to learn um, how to be part of the world, and not always feel like I'm fighting it or something, so it's been a very humbling learning experience. So yes, I continue to work. I think the relationship right now with my Tirunangai friends with whom I work, I think it's now grown beyond and above the work itself. So.
I read that article in detail, where you talked about your thesis. I think UT Austin published it, right?
It was an interview, I think. Yeah.
Interview, yes.
Yeah.
You also talked about the plurality that they embrace, outside their community, and you talked about the way our society is right now, and the way Tirunangai, community embrace the plurality of other faiths. And one more thing you said about the way they help, people when they are in crisis among their community. You talked about, if I may have to use the same word, energetic intensity. I like that word.
Yeah. So yes, I mean, there is a lot to learn from how Tirunangais have organized their lives, and there is no one single Tirunangai way of organizing your life. And there are some things that are common, but there is a lot of room for living in very different ways. And many of us know that Hijras, Tirunangais, and many transgender women, trans feminine communities, you know. Uh, Build these mother-daughter, guru-chela relationships, and those are there. But there are also, and the another thing is this relationship to the goddess, right? And those attachments change from region to region. But also there is no and what is also important for my Tirunangai friends with whom I do my work is also the worship of Pyre shrines. They go to the Pyre shrines, and that's important to them. And it's partly because of the long histories of connection with the Hijra life worlds in Western India. And there is also, the Angalaman devotees, Tirunangais with whom I do my work, they also do annual pilgrimages to Velankani shrine. So there is a broad, capacious way to imagine devotional life, religious life. And many of the devotees of Angalaman who come today are also from Christian Muslim families. And as you will read, Tirunangais also have a very critical relationship with caste, because they leave their I mean, many ways they step out of their natal or biological families, in a way giving up their place in the caste family, and it's they wrestle with it, right? I mean, you don't necessarily have to say that it's caste free. It can be caste free, but the point is that there is a critical relationship, because your relationship with your biological family or natal family becomes troubled. So there is quite a lot to learn, and I think it's perhaps, I think you asked, we talked about how to help others in crisis. I think it also comes from this, when the traditional structures that are supposed to protect you, are supposed to come to your rescue when you're in trouble, when you can no longer take them for granted, and when you have a critical relationship with those structures, because those structures, however nice they can be, when in times of crisis you realize that they are informed by caste or informed by various other oppressive logics, then I think then you create your own structures, and when you create your own structures, and you need to know how to show up for others like you, or others who are dependent on you, others who so and to be a transgender person in India today or anywhere is incredibly hard. It's to face great vulnerability, and to quote, it's to experience violence. So then trans persons in general face a lot more crises, and it means that you need to keep intervening in crises, whether it is police violence, or whether it is violence from communities, or whether it is illness or aging or whatever it is. So part of my work has also been, again, I did not plan it like this, the way anthropological field works. You spend a lot of time, and I got to see how Tirunangais respond when somebody else is in crisis, and the kind of energetic intensity with which Tirunangais go to rescue or to respond to somebody in crisis. It's moving, but it's also very mind-boggling to see how can this happen time and again. How can people have the energy to keep responding to crises, and what kind of a world is it that keeps bringing crisis,
Yeah, yeah.
to people repeatedly? So yeah, so that's been the core of my work. What I'm doing here is also a kind of translation. I mean, ethnography involves translation, because it is to make the workings of one world, one cultural world, or one life world intelligible and recognizable to somebody, and it brings the same anxieties, same worries, same responsibilities that any act of translation does. And the thing is that this is not nothing great. I mean, the sense, trans people in India today are producing writings and literature, and for instance, Revati Amma, A. Revati, her memoir, she wrote a memoir called Vellai Mori in Tamil, which was beautifully translated by V. Geeta, and Revati also performs her life story, and the life story has all of the things that I just mentioned. So it's not like I'm not needed. I'm actually superfluous to the situation. So the Revati Amma came to Princeton and performed, and just moved. It was just the conversation it generated. Priya Babu in Madurai, for instance, who runs the Transgender Resource Center, amazing place, has written books, has written a study of Tirunangai life worlds, has written novels, is making a movie. Kalki Subramaniam, many others, right? And trans men too. There's material, there's work that comes out of it. So, but for me, it was a way to, coming from an upper caste family, coming from a Brahmin family, and having my own struggles to find structures of support, but to see how the group of Tirunangais that I work with, to see how my Tirunangai friends have created a way to be with each other, but also the way to be with their neighbors, the way to be with the family, the way to care for parents. So a lot of Tirunangais now are now caring for their elderly parents. It could be the family that once rejected you or once threw you out, and slowly maybe the relationship mended. But Tirunangais are caregivers, and they materially providing for their elderly parents. Anyway, this is all, more than anything else, it's a way to learn. What we often forget is, we may be very caught up in the way we live our lives. We forget that other peoples are living lives differently in other ways.
Hmm.
So other ways of living and organizing one's lives are possible. So it's just been, like for me, a source of wonder and joy. Yeah.
Beautiful. So when is this book coming out?
That's a good question. Well, I will be done with the manuscript this year. Again, it's been a slow thing for these reasons, right? Because Tirunangais don't need me to write a book. Their lives are playing out. It's not for to be genuine. I have to be honest, right? So, what am I writing? Am I right? Am I getting this right? Is this the right way to look at it? Is this a way that is this a good explanation or a good description of how things are, how these relationships are? I think, and then COVID, of course, came in. I finished in 2020, and then COVID started, and then of course all our lives were completely upended. So it's taken a couple of years, but I hope that I'll be done with this manuscript later this year, and then we will see. Hopefully next year. Yeah.
See, you are a performing artist too, right? You are a trained
No
Bharatanatyam dancer,
longer. Used to be. Yes.
and you are into writing, right? So, in terms of artistic pursuit, could you please compare in terms of self-expression and communication to the external world? Can you please compare these two art forms?
With dance, it's again, the dance has its own politics, right? I mean, a form like Bharatanatyam has its own history of and its politics, and we more than ever we are now aware of it, and we talk about it, and that's important. But as a child, I did not know all that, and for me, I think that even as a child, I knew that there was something different about me. I didn't have the word gay or queer. You don't know, I mean, you're a child, but I had the sense that I was different, and I could see it in sometimes in the eyes of others. I think dance was a space in which I think I could sort of forget all that, and just it gave me joy. I don't know if it is self expression. It felt like more like self forgetting, actually, for a long time, which was very helpful, which was very calming for me. It was very therapeutic for me. And I think that I did the mistake of thinking that I'm going to take art professionally. I don't think I was cut out for that. I think I was really enjoying dancing, because I think it took my attention away from worrying about things, and I think I mistook that sense of freedom and joy as I'll tell you this, Anil, in everything I do, and this is the truth. I have more passion than talent. I am trying to remedy that. Okay, so I'm trying to change that. I'm trying to become more skilled in the things that I do, including translation. But I think I meet the world with more passion than skill, and that's not always good. You need skill too. But the thing is that I mistook that passion when it comes to dance for, I'm going to do this professionally. I don't think I was cut out for that, and I struggled and I gave it up. And with writing I struggle too, with translation I struggle too, and so all I'm saying is that all of these could be vehicles for self-expression, but for me, um, uh, you know uh, it doesn't come easily. It takes work. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Nice. When did you get initiated to Perumal Murugan's work? And I think your first book, One Part Woman, is your first book for translation, right? That you translated.
Yeah. Yeah.
What made you take up the
Yeah.
translation of One Part Woman, and how did it happen?
I forget what else I had read before that. I had been reading literature, but I remember that I picked up Madharu Pagan at the book fair, at the Chennai International Book Fair. I think it was December 2011. Um, and I read it, and I was just deeply moved by it. Many reasons. One is, for instance, the Kali and Ponna's relationship, the way in which Perumal Murugan is able to describe the love between them, the intimacy between them. They really love each other. In fact, the story is about how to keep that intimacy
Right.
going. Right. The threat is being childless, and the way the society around them
Yeah.
perceives that is a threat to their intimacy. But the intimacy, the sensuousness, in the way in which they look at each other. All of it was very moving for me. um, and uh, and I was very moved, and I was like speaking to Kannan of Kalachuvad, because I used to write. For a while I was writing in Kalachuvad magazine, so I knew Kannan. So I told him, somebody has to translate this, and he said, well, why don't you? I had translated activist pamphlets, and I translated some poetry, between Tamil and
Right.
English. And then, but then, I think, again, like I said, I think the passion, the passion overcame any diffidence that I should have had about any lack of appropriate skill. But anyway, so I took it up and I really enjoyed it. But even then, I thought of, like, I thought, okay, I'm translating this for my friends who don't, my Indian friends who don't read Tamil literature. So those were the people in my mind, those were the friends, audience, readers in my mind. And then and so anyway, so I did it, and it was fun. I enjoyed doing it.
You've also translated Ambai's short stories.
I had also, again, I had been reading Ambai both in Tamil and in Lakshmi Holmstrom's
Yeah.
translations, for instance. And there's a tightness to the stories, right? I mean, there is nothing that is not needed there. The stories are very tight and clearly composed, and there is a subtlety to things. Things are not overstated, and I'd always been a fan. And when and then we got together. Well, I had read ஒரு கருப்பு சிலந்தியுடன் ஒரு இரவு night with a black spider, the collection. And then when we started talking about this, I was just very moved. It's about getting the the subtlety, just sometimes things are just said, suggested, nothing more. It was a really fantastic experience. We worked back and forth, and I happened to be in India at the time, so we sort of went back and forth with various drafts, and it was a really lovely experience.
Okay, going back to Perumal Murugan, where do you place Perumal Murugan's work in contemporary Tamil literature, and why should anybody read him?
There are other people who can answer this better. People who have a better grasp of the history of Tamil literature, and the sort of a broad, detailed view of contemporary Tamil literary landscape. Unfortunately, I'm not one of them, because again, I'm not a literary scholar, so I don't have that sense. And even though I did my master's in literature, and I've been an anthropologist for a while, so my attention is taken up with other things. But I think Perumal Murugan is one of the finest Tamil writers we have, and the reason to read him is his capacity to, the there is a way in which he gets into the skin of the characters, especially the women characters. There's a way in which I think he is able to sort of give us a glimpse of the world through their eyes. It happens in flashes, and you see how the world must look. Even in Madhuru Bagan, there is towards the end, she is Ponnas at the fairgrounds, and she sees these dancers dancing, and you see, for a moment, you see the dancers through her eyes, or you see Kali through her eyes, or you see, when it comes to Pukuri and Pyre in English, you see how the rock, or the new place in which Saroja finds herself, everything, even as the novel opens, she's in this landscape that is totally alien to her, and how it looks. I think just the capacity to get a glimpse of the world through somebody else's eyes, somebody else's things. And I think you see that flash is quite beautiful, and I think that in itself is enough reason why you should read Perumal Murugan. Yeah, I mean, even a goat, right? The story of the goat is brilliantly translated by Kalyan Raman. And I don't know, you want to call it empathy, or you want to call it, I think Keats called it the negative capability, that capacity to negate one's own perspective, so to speak, to see the world from some other perspective. And he says Shakespeare had it, and Dickens had it, and stuff. So I think that's a way to sort of see a reason why I would read Perumal Murugan.
Totally, how many books you have translated so far?
Of his?
Entire your body of work, so to say.
Oh God, I don't think we should use words like body of work. It's all new, and I genuinely wish. I mean this. This is not false modesty at all. I really wish I could just go back and do over everything, but that's not how things work. I took 5 or 6. I think I'm not able to quickly tell you the number, but yeah.
Okay. Now, how many hours you spend on a working day and on a holiday on translations? And how many pages you do? You have any target or?
I do have targets, but I rarely meet them.
Okay.
Um, and I don't know. Some days, I tell myself that I'm going to sit for, uh, a certain time, but sometimes I do get sort of get caught up in something, and then I just end up doing only a little. And some days it sort of flows. I don't know. I've learned to think of this as grace, and I'm like, okay, today it's happening, so I'm grateful that it's happening. So so not to. It's very humbling. I'm learned to think of this as okay now. I'll go with the flow. Um, but yeah, no, I do set targets, but I rarely meet them. So yeah, but the editors have been very patient so far. Yeah,
How many hours you spend at least? Okay. That
per day.
yeah, per day, yes.
Again, I can't tell you that because it depends because of the job, right? Because of the teaching, because of, again, I had to work on my dissertation at the time, and then I had to do on, I had my own research, audio interviews, transcription, translation. So I had to do the other kind of translation also. So I can't tell you, but I there have been breaks when I remember there have been summers when I've sat for 3 4 hours every day to do things. But when the semester is going on, it's all at the mercy of how things go. Yeah.
Pyre, the source, Pukuli is dedicated to a boy named Ilavasan, right? What is the backstory?
Ilavarasan was a Dalit boy who was murdered, and that was in 2013. In Dharmapuri district, was married to an upper caste girl, a 1 year girl, and one of those unfortunately shamefully one of the many so-called honor killings that we have seen. And and by the time I think the translation came out, there had been other murders. The Gokul Raj murder had happened, and recently there was the verdict in the Chennai High Court. And so yeah, the book I think grew out of this sadness, this grief, this anger at the murder of Dalit youth. Yeah.
What attracted to me as a reader in his writing is the way he deals with negative characters in his writing, right? Negative, so to say, the dark characters. For instance, Kumareshan's mother Marai, though it's a dark character, he vividly describes her longing for her son and her journey as a young widow, about her fears and getting isolated from his son because of the marriage and all. And it's really lovely the way he wrote about it. Even Saroja, so the relationship between Saroja and Kumaresan, though he left her home, parental home, and came out with Kumaresan to get married to. She keeps reminiscing about her brother and father, and the way it's written, there is a lot of empathy and balance for different shades of each character. They are not monochromatic characters.
No, I completely agree. The I mean, Perumal Murugan shows that we're all, you know, fortunately or unfortunately, we're beings within history, right? Within a moment, and we not. I mean, she's shaped by her life. She's shaped by her caste. She's shaped by her marriage. She's shaped by her widowhood, and she's shaped by how she was treated by others. And I think because she was widowed early, I think that she had this huge dependence on her family. So I think that also makes her more, binds her more towards, the caste based family, right? Because her family supported her and everything. And so yeah, so you see, like, she's three-dimensional, she's full, I mean, it's not a flat badness, right? It's not a flat sort of a false traditional position. It's the I mean, he shows how embedded, how difficult it is to move past the system or get, because people's biographies are shaped by lives and who supports them and what. So yeah, so you see that in her, and you see the fear, you see the worry, and you see, and also you see that fear, the self-preservation, like what happens, I am going to be abandoned, and and the village is going to turn against me. There is that. And yeah, you see, I mean, you see that even in other novels as well. I mean, if you take Resolve, Kanganam, you see the man is struggling to get married, and you see there is a mother who is portrayed as somehow difficult. At least the son experiences her as a difficult mother who is come in the way of prospective alliances. But you see her also in her full three-dimensional thing. It doesn't mean that it doesn't excuse her behavior. It doesn't excuse Marai's behavior, but you see the richness of the characterization. And even in Madhurubagan, I think Kali, for instance, there are moments when Kali and Muthu, his brother-in-law, are drinking, and you can see that even when they are talking about the temple festival and everything, you can see there is a moment where Kali's own casteist mentality comes out. Yeah, so I'm saying Kali again, because just because he's a protagonist doesn't mean that he is this perfect person, right? He's well, one of the things that makes him anxious about the temple festival is that there are men from other castes there, and who knows who the man would be. So yeah, so I think Perumal Murugan sort of, I think, gets at the complexity of things. Yeah.
About the book Pyre, right? So, what is that you wanted the readers to experience and feel once they complete reading it? What is the takeaway from Pyre, in your opinion?
You know, first of all, I don't know if I approach fiction that way with sort of a takeaway. But again, as I say, I got to make a lot of, the edition that got nominated for the show, longlisted for the International Booker. I
Yes.
was able to make a lot of once Grove Atlantic got the rights for the international, I insisted on making a lot of edits. The thing is that my own grasp of, I must say, English has grown over the last decade or so, because before that I had a sort of a, I did my masters in literature and everything, but I had a sort of a very Indian, I lived here, I was here, I was only here, and I think a very clunky idiomatic Indian English, which is perfectly fine. That's how I speak. But I realized that for international audiences, it needs to be different. And I also learned reading other people. I reading Kalyan Raman, reading Suchitra, reading Nandini, and many others. How to do render things smoothly in English, and because there is always this confusion in me about, like, should do I want the reader to get do I want to make the translation a bit not smooth, so that they realize that they're reading about some other world. And so these are all decisions that I've never been able to resolve. I think I'm slowly getting better at them, but I was able to make a lot of edits. But I also, the thing that I think that touched me more very much about Pyre was, again, we read about honor killings, or we read about intercaste marriages facing family violence or something like this, and we read them once they become quote unquote cases, right? Whether in the journalistic cases or legal cases, but to imaginatively render how it feels psychologically, it's almost like a every chapter there, especially in the middle part of, I mean, starting from the beginning, but especially in the second half, is like almost like a psychological thriller, right? I mean, it's like, what's her state of mind, how is she experiencing within it, never feeling at home, feeling threatened but not quite able to say what is threatening, what is going to happen, something is looming. And imagine living like that, and I think, it shows you, wow, what it must be to live like this, right? So that's what, yeah.
She keeps thinking about impending danger, and she doesn't know where it is coming from. Uh, that feeling, I would say, Perumal Murugan, or you beautifully, you're able to export that feeling into the reader. That's wonderfully done, actually.
Thank you. No, all credit goes to Perumal Murugan. When I read it, that thing. No, again, she wants to hope that uh, things will become all right. There is a part of her that
Yeah,
really wants to hope. It's not even hope; it's a desire to hope. It's almost like she wants to feel. But then the part of her, there's nothing that proves that, there's no evidence around her that tells her that things are going to be better, except for him, right? He keeps assuring, and then there is a moment when she sees that his resolve is also failing, because he's getting drunk and he's finding it hard. And then again, when he sets up the shop in this nearby town, when she goes there again, that gives, very funny, like, she's given these little glimmers of hope, that things might change. Um, but then, that's they're almost like mirages. Nothing gives her a hold, so for me to see, it's just very heartrending to read that. Yeah.
yeah. I think that's the best part of the book, in my opinion. The kind of tension he creates,
Yeah. Yeah, and it's, again, no, it's not an action packed thriller. It's all it's about how the world is, and she her perception of the world, and her misgivings about the perception of the world, and so yeah, very deeply moving, I must say. Yeah.
We have almost come to the end of my list
Mhm.
of questions. Um, can you tell us about your current projects and translation projects that you aspire to take up or currently working on?
Well, I recently published in the US. The Indian edition is not out. Amazon Crossing um, has published my translation of Sundara Ramasami's or Poliya Marathin Kadai as The Tamarind Tree.
No, it's available on Amazon India to buy. They will import it and give you. Yesterday I was checking.
Oh, good to know. I worked on it for a while. Again, I had to work through COVID and moving to Princeton, new things, teaching, and various things. But it was also very challenging. It's a very, again, a difficult novel because of all the different characters. Like, there are a multitude of characters, and there are stories within stories, people telling stories about others, and then you have to make sure that when you've gotten out of a story within a story, and there is a lot of sarcastic humor, and interestingly, also, very weirdly and interestingly, all the characters are men, right? I mean, the women are talked about, but they're all men. And then so you and then and some of the men are misogynist, and you wonder, oh wow, is it a very masculinist, is it a misogynist novel? But then you realize even as you read, and as I mean, especially during the process of translation, when I was reading it over and over, is that you realize none of the men, actually, it's a novel about the petty, it's a novel about many things, but it's also about the pettiness of the world of men, right? About the none of the characters survive our moral scrutiny, really, including, I would say, even the narrator is also, you realize, is a very interesting person, not without flaws, deep flaws. Anyway, it was a very interesting novel for me to do, but currently I'm not working on. I might be getting into something, but I will be able to talk about it soon. But I don't. I'm currently just working on my book manuscript, which is based on my research and stuff. So yeah.
Sure, sure. And getting Pyre longlisted for the Booker this year.
Yeah.
It's a wonderful achievement. How did you feel about it? And does it anyway change the way you look at your work?
I just felt anxious. um, like I
Okay.
said, I mean it.
Yeah.
I think when I was translating Sundaram Sami's Puriya Marathin Kada, last year, it's been 10 years, I would say 11 years, since I first started sort of doing this work, and I felt, oh, I genuinely felt, oh, I'm beginning to see how this works, how what this thing called translation means. And it's a very humbling feeling, but it also doesn't mean I got it. It's like I had a hard time, and I worked with people, but um, I just, like I said before, I really wish somebody would give me a chance to do over everything that I have done so far. I mean it, I genuinely mean it, because I think that I'm just beginning to get, and this is not false modesty. So it feels, and again, when you translate, you feel this, it's not your own, it's somebody else's, and it's a very interesting place to be in, because you're trying to mediate a relationship between a text and the world, and an author and his readers, new readers. So it's a very interesting place, interesting sense of responsibility. I'm never sure I'm up for the task, but also as if I'm not able to stop myself from doing it. So it's a very strange place to be in. But I see other people, I learn a lot from my fellow translators, I must say, whether they're translators from Tamil or from other languages. I read them and I imagine, oh, this is how they must have thought about it. This is how maybe this is how they arrived at this. So yeah.
Thank you, Aniruddhan. Thank you very much. Thank you for your time, and I wish you all the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and thanks to you. Thanks to your listeners. Yeah.